Well, hello,
Ibo.
sir, and hello, my students. And we're recording this. What is today, November 5th? And we
Yeah.
have this great conversation with a wonderful young man over in South Africa talking about international perspectives on family. So, why don't you introduce
Ibo.
yourself and tell my students who you are?
Sure, sure. Molweni. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Sizwe Mxobo. Ooh, and because we're talking about family, I must throw in my middle name. I have a middle name called Nicholas. So my full name is Sizwe Nicholas Mxobo. I'm born and raised in Cape Town, informal settlement called Mkondo Square. That's why I stay in Nyanga. And then, yeah, currently working for the city of Cape Town, the municipality, as a support to a political office. So yeah, that's whom am I. Yebo.
Yeah, well, so we think about
Sure.
family, and
Mhm.
certainly if you want to, it always connects to culture. And so why don't you just give us an overview of
Sure.
family means in Xhosa culture, and maybe a little bit about, for my students who go, Xhosa, I don't know what that is, so give us a little background.
Sure, sure. So I come from the Xhosa people. So with us in South Africa, so how do I describe and define? So the South African notion, right? South African context is that there's the political side of it, where obviously I'm a black person. There's then and you guys recently had an issue with this. There's a whole race in us called the colored community. Then then the white community. Obviously, the white community all know what I would say former European or European descent. And then the colored community for us is a mixture between the black and white. But it has its own strong accent into it and its own system coming through. Then there's obviously the black community, which when you look between the politics of colored community and the black community, more is centered and shaped around apartheid policies and framing. But for South Africans and everyone would say around the world, we're all black people. Then within the black community, I come from a specific community of the Xhosa people. And those Xhosa people come from a bigger community of the Nguni people, the Nguni tribe, which it is historically said they come from somewhere West Africa. So there's also that part of the history. But as they moved down to South Africa, then established themselves as the Ngunis, which they are made up of three, I don't want to say three tribes, but three other major languages and communities, which is the Zulus, which is what's mostly known about when talking about Shaka Zulu. And then there's the Xhosa people. Then there's the Ndebele people. Those are the top three I can think of in my mind. Oh, and then there's the Swati people as well. So we come from one community of Nguni people. Then I come from the Xhosa side from the Nguni. Their family is your everything culturally. And me, Xhosa is a definition of my culture, where I come from, but it's also my language that I speak. The same way that there's English people who speak English. So I also, in that same context, I come from that. And for us, family is everything. Family is it's your whole life, literally. It's your whole life. Even in our cultural practices and cultural anything that's culture, anything that's tradition, anything that has to do with praise and worship, it comes from the ring of family in that sense. Because even in our cultural context of what we worship and how we worship God, because we worship God, but we go through God through our ancestors, and those ancestors are our family lineage. So it's part of our family members who've been through. Then, so I come more specifically, then I'll even say from the Xhosa tribe. How do I establish family? I come from a tribe, or the Xhosa tribe, then within the Xhosa tribe, I come from a clan, immediate, my family with Oblangwe, which is my clan name. And I don't know how to translate it because and say Oblangwe, what they say in English. But it's a similarity of there's the supposedly a story that comes through I'm thinking of now is that there was a group of leopards. that were troubling a certain village, and some group of people took their blankets and went and fought then and chased away those leopards. Outside of that, because and my Xhosa name, this thing, a leopard is called Ingwe. So they were then called Oblangwe. So I come from that family lineage. In that family clan of Oblangwe, I come from a specific house of Umxobo, which is my great great grandfather's name, Umxobo. Then throughout of that house, then I come through as Usizwe. So my family picture is encompassed then within all of this. For us, families in all of this, it's in your blackness, or your identification, your racial classification, then your Nguni tribe, the fact that I'm Xhosa, and I can associate with Zulus because we'd say we come from the Nguni concept. Then from there, I would say obviously from the Ngunis, then I'm Xhosa, then I am in the Xhosa, then I'm from the Blangwe clan. Now, whenever I were to meet someone who's Blangwe, we associate that as family. That person, if it's a woman, I can't even marry in our culture because we share the same clan name. Despite our family, what's our immediate connection is family or not, we don't marry because we regard that as family. Yeah, because for us, family is everything from our ancestors. Those would be the people from my lineage. And then there's immediate family, obviously, of my mother, father, in my case, my mother, my twin sister, and then a bunch of cousins. That's what shapes us family for me at a personal space. Is now alive twin sister, my mother's sister, and my cousins. And then I have my Mxhobo brothers as well, that we come through another line. So that's what family looks like for us. I don't know if I've simplified it or complicated in a way. So yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and thank you for that. You know, a lot of folks will say,
Sure.
well, family is everything for lots of people, right?
Mm.
So,
Yes.
what have you noticed? You've also traveled and you've had a chance to
Yep.
be in other places. What have you noticed that might be the differences between sort of the Xhosa family definition and maybe other cultures or other places where you go,
Eh,
okay, yeah, they love their family, but we do it differently and we have our own unique
yes.
way of approaching it.
For us, because family is so huge and vast, it is hard to quantify. It comes up when you have an event and then everyone shows up from your clan, then that person is immediately considered family. So how do you then prioritize and how do you shape up? So those are the difference that I've seen when I travel to other places. Oh, your immediate family is made up of all family, but also there's the shaping of friends, of close people that we also consider family. For us, the clan name takes the first prize. Then you go into others. Oh, is this your mother's sister? But those people will automatically be in your clan. It even creates interesting aspects of how you engage, especially when we're in Eastern Cape in the cultural context. So I'll have my cousins because I come from a family of three sisters, right? And my clan name, my surname comes from my mother's side because my mother was not married, which is another huge thing in how you define family as well. So between mother and father, if they are married, you easily know you associate with family from the father's side. That becomes your immediate family. But if they're not married, then you're considered as a child as your grandfather's child,
Mm.
not as your mom's child. So so even that and how then you look at family also that big shape up in multiple families around. So we huge on our clan name as family, on our surname as family, immediate family, but we also have cousins who would have different clan names because they in my case, my mother's sisters are married to other clans. So remember, as a clan, we don't marry, so they'll marry into another clan. So those would be my family as well. But they know those are my immediate families. The three sisters come from the same household as which I come from. But if their kids come through, they're considered cousins. They are not immediate family when we're in a traditional setting because everyone that shares the clan is then gets first basis of immediate family in that sense. So and it's always a triggering thing. And there's celebrations even aligned to that. if I go to my cousin and sister, they're doing a cultural celebration, I know what to bring based on my space of a family and where I come from. There are obligations that I must attend. So if someone in my on my mother's sister's side of the family, my cousin sister, if someone passes on and it was a immediate family member on that side, I must attend that funeral for
Mm.
two reasons. Not because just as my mother's sister, but because I represent a house that married into, so the in-laws. So
Mm.
I have to fill up a space of being an in-law into that family. And so you carry then these shapings by family and sense of responsibilities as well, which is something we huge on the side, especially in the Xhosa culture. Yeah.
Yeah. You
And
mentioned,
also,
yeah.
yep.
Mhm. No, go on.
Sure, sure. No. You go on. I was gonna go to another phase, but
Oh,
I
okay.
know I'm sure it will come up. Yeah.
When we get going, we have great conversations. So you
Beautiful.
mentioned about marriage, and so are there
Mhm.
any particular kinds of expectations or rules, any part of that, like, the when somebody proposes to get married, or even the marriage itself, weddings, post-marriage, what are some of the kind of cultural expectations around the whole marriage process?
Sure, sure. So there's definitely you don't just go and see a woman, go and ask for permission to marry, put in a ring. There's a whole lobola process, which is what is it in English? Dowry,
A
right?
dowry, yep. Hmm.
Dowry process, which one has to show up in our culture, which is important. So in Xhosa, dowry starts in a minimum of 10 cows, and to whatever framing or amount is attached to those cows, that's how you'll pay. So people pay up to 100,000 and even more, depending also on the royalty. Because if that person comes from a royal house, that's also addition. So there's this huge ilobola thing from a guy's perspective. You bring it to the female's family. And it's a very misunderstood as well thing when people see it. It's not a case of you buying the woman to marry. It's a case of indicating to the parents that I can take care of her. I've been able to produce as a man. I've been able to do this for myself and to save because I know this part of my life will get in today. I'm prepped on it, even before getting there. Or there's also another important thing then that I have to come to is that you can't marry if you haven't been to the mountains from a Xhosa culture. Yeah, now we cultural, but traditionally, because only a man pays dowry. So if you're considered and you haven't been to initiation where you become a man from a boy, your lobola, your dowry is not considered as it's a good one.
Well, you
It
got to talk
must. So
about
there's
that
a
now.
whole
So talk
process.
about going to the mountain and initiation.
Sure, sure. So for us as Xhosa people, once you hit ages of anything between 18 and 21, as a boy child, you go into a process of isolation and go and learn about becoming a man. Obviously, there are things that are done, just like in any circumcision school. So it's part of a circumcision process. But more than just the circumcision alone, there's a learning process, which in different schools and things, culture has become very loose now that we get scolded about. But at any point, if a boy has been through that process, of becoming a man and he starts acting a specific way now in his manhood, he gets questioned because it's like, why did you go through that process? What was the meaning of that process? If you go to a mountain, you are a young man here involved in gangsterism, and just when you come back, you're expected to have a sense of responsibility that indicates you're a man. And part of those responsibilities, the key element of it, is also then marrying, getting into marriage,
Mm.
which is a top end spec of it. So I can say now different spaces as an unmarried man, there are cultural spaces that I'm not considered man enough to have a voice in because I haven't been through the stages of marriage. So also there's this consideration of view of things in stagings and how it shapes up. Like you get to one level of it. So there's the dowry process, but in order for you to pay dowry, in order for that dowry to be recognized, you have to become a man. And going through that process, it's a process of school in the bush. No women allowed, space of isolation, only men deal with you. And yeah, It's a very sacred space and a very sacred practice that we still practice today and value very much. Even though there's a lot of negative connotations around it, there's been a lot of negativity. There's even far things as death, because it's not a easy one-two process you just go by. But it's a crucial process for young men in the Xhosa culture to become, for boys to become men. So yeah.
Thank you.
You-
So, and you mentioned it a little bit, but obviously,
Mhm.
when it comes to the modern times and social media and television and the internet, that changes around the world culture, right? Because folks get access to
Yes.
other
Oh yeah.
cultures, where before it might have been, look, this is who we are,
Yes.
what we know. How has that influenced, you think, either the processes you mentioned or family, overall? Are people losing some of the cultural traditions, or do you feel like it's still, when it comes to family, still staying very strong and united in that way?
Okay. I think I think obviously looking at the times where we're at, there's been a lot of changes. There's there's a lot of changes that came through. I don't even think, because the value of social media is then us learning from each other. The value of most media is giving us a new perspective from different cultures, new ways of doing things. And that has come through in the biggest way. So loosely, one of my own personal struggles in the family structure that has changed is that, so in how we look at family and who has value, based on where you're born, it gives you a specific position and a point of functionality. Now we find, based on how much money you make, it will determine how much say you have. So those things have really gotten into where things are not as easy as before. Who has a say? If there's a cultural thing that needs to be practiced, we know the older guys lead. Now you find good, the one who will have a say is the one who puts up the money for the thing to be done. It's the
Mm.
one. So we've gotten to this money controlled nature more than the principles of culture and family development used to teach us the way as a way of doing things. So we in those things we've got into what used to be secret space, like the process I was talking about now of becoming a man, where there's now movies that talk about the process, but when we look at it, we're like, no, that's just a snippet shot of what that process is to be. But because it's so sacred, even that snippet is not supposed to be in the public's eye. So the media has changed a lot of things in that sense, that we now don't have a sense of sacred spaces, because we wanna live for the posting, for the, yeah, for everything in that space. So I think a lot of things have been influenced and changed in that way. It's the same as addressing issues now as families. It's no longer a prioritized thing, more than a person will just jump and come and get everyone's voices on an issue on social media. And then by the time this is a thing, maybe that could be discussed by a family, but there's so many views and so many people involved around it. There's clear the issue is never solved, because now you have to complain about the process of how the issue got out there in the first place. So yeah. So I think in that way there's been a lot of, but on the other side of then media talk, there's a lot of things that have been one way for the longest time. And I think there's been, whether through films, through movies, through even through social media a lot. Now we see our cultures as well being embraced. Our way of dressing becomes, oh, like, oh, okay, this is a way others dress. On the other side, there's guys now who've developed shops and fashion sense, calling it Amaxhosa, and his designs being inspired and being at an international brand. So there's been a giving and in and out of sense in a way.
Mhm.
So yeah.
But yeah, and most folks here in the
Hmm.
States have no idea that when they watch Black Panther and they just knew, right, that was Wakanda, and no, it's that's close up, right? So,
Yes. Oh yeah.
now the
Hmm.
world now has exposure. People know an
Yebo.
appreciation of culture around the world. Any particular things about the child rearing process, the things that parents and children, what are any kind of traditional expectation? You mentioned obviously initiation for boys,
Hmm.
but is there anything else that you think of? You know what? There are particular ways that we raise our children that you think are really, really special or important or different than maybe others.
Oof, yo, there's so many. There's so many. I and so we raise. I don't know. So we raise with clear boundaries of gender. If I were to establish it there between boy child and 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 girl child, and 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 so this then establishes who you are, what you can do around the home, what are your duties, uh what are your duties at home. Boy child, you're outside, you're preparing the grass, you're cleaning the yard. If you are in Eastern Cape and you're living in the village, you're taking care of the sheep and everyone, while the girl child is at home taking care of the home, preparing the meals and stuff like that. But then there are also cultural things that are done, like when a boy child, when in child is born, there's a specific ceremony to create a traditional blanket for them. That's done. It's called imbeleko, and that used to be a process because there was no blankets. But even now there's blankets and everything. That process is still there, and that process is to say this child is linked up to their ancestors.
Mhm.
It's not I don't know how to put it, but there's a way where the language is like, okay, we're introducing you back to the ancestors that you come from to say
Mhm.
this is who you are on earth. So there are those legal cultural things, and yeah, and I think it shows up in works and how kids are raised. It shows up where you what is the way you grow up to say, here's your focus point, here's your focal point. Your whole development for you, young boy, is to become a man. It's to know how to take care of the house from this aspect. For you, young girl, it's to say, how do you take care of the home from this aspect? So that prep goes in, starts very young, which the way I've seen it, it seems like it's the way it is around the world. There isn't much uh, change or in how we do things on that aspect. So yeah.
Okay.
And talking about Yebo, so talking about Black Panther, right? Everyone knew Mandela. Most people knew Mandela around the world. But to say what's Mandela's language? What's this? So for us to see a movie like Black Panther and to hear the story because for there's an old man who to John Carney on I think he dies. He's right through the first Black Panther, but he plays a key role in American in the last Captain America in Civic War. I think that's where he dies out. So the older gentleman who's the old king that we start now Black Panther with, he's the he's Xhosa, so he's as soon as he was casted for the role, and then there was a language introduction by the producers and the developers of the movie that was they said the usual way of I'm not slamming down on Americans. The usual way I will form just a language, will form just a language. Well, this is it decided to say, hey, I have a home language. We don't. I have a home language called isiXhosa. Can't we make that language the official language of Wakanda? And it won't matter in dialects how the cast members speak and whatnot, because we speak Xhosa differently based on which corner of
Mhm.
of South Africa you're from. So it won't matter. If they speak it in soft tongue in that manner, they speak it in this way, it won't matter. But can we use then my home language? I'm willing to teach, willing to guest cast member. So for us, that was a huge thing. It was a huge thing to hear the voice of a South African being recognized in that notion in a movie that big. But then what actually happened was also a big thing for us because then it got to ground Wakanda, the Wakandan story for us. It made it personal. It made us something that we see ourselves in. When simple questions and it's not when simple questions were asked that shape us culturally to ask ungubani. When that question is asked, it's easy to say, "Hey, who are you?" Right? And it's just me. It's just me, this face. It's just me, this Caesar. But when you're asked in that way in a cultural context, ungubani, I want to know your lineage. So
Mhm.
those are huge questions. While they're a small thing for us, and so the way they were used in the movie, that shaping was such a big thing for us. So yeah, I
Love it.
can go
Love
on
it.
and
No,
on
I know. I love
sure,
it. I
sure.
love we get going. We got 30 seconds
Sure.
left. What's the final thing you want to say to my students about family Xhosa, South Africa, anything that you would say, you know what, I want you to take this one idea away about who we are and what family means to us.
Yo, I think for us, it's the notion that family is everything. When we discuss family, we're not only discussing about the live ones, we're discussing about the ones who've passed, the ones who are forthcoming, the ones who stand on who we stand on their shoulders, the one who stand with us. Our notion of family as well. It's not that the dead is gone and buried. The spirits live amongst us in our sounds, in our songs, in our dance, in our dance move, in a type of Caribbean culture, in Amapiano, there's a lot of culturalism that we see in those moves and everything, and the shape up of things. For us, family is growth, family is wealth, family is, yeah, family is your life. Family is your base. It's the base of who you are. You know, when we see someone does a funny thing on the street or they're being naughty, the first thing that goes to more than what it says about them, the question would be, which home are you coming from? Why are you acting like this? Because who you are is a representation of your home, which is a representation of your family. It's more than just being. We don't have this oneness of it's just me, which is something I think we also struggle with culturally, with these other concepts of whether it's communism, where it's just about me and how much I make and these voices. But because for us we are people's people, singabantu babantu, that's our belief. Even our core driving principle is ubuntu, which means the no it awareness of humanity as a whole. So that's who we are, because yeah, that's the notion of family and our first backup. You know, we even say it in the Xhosa notion that everyone else can become an ex in your life. You can become a former friend, this boyfriend, this girlfriend at one time, but your family member is not someone. There's no there's no notion of a word for us that indicates this person is no longer a family member, dead or alive. They'll always be part of you. And yeah,
I
yeah,
love it.
boys,
I
that's
love it.
sure.
Nkosi Mhlobo, I appreciate you,
Enkosi mhlobam.
and I'm gonna hit you up later. So thank you so much.
Danko ke mhlobam, ndiyabulela. Thank you. Sharp sharp. Cheers.